Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm sure more will be trickling in, but I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get started. As I shared with Urban, there is a lot of material to cover because one of my weaknesses is not knowing what material to leave out because I think it's all important. And so I'll try to get through the didactic portion in about an hour to an hour and a half, and then we'll jump in with certain pieces that may resonate with Urban for the live demo at the end. And then I'll try to do some pausing for Q&A as well in this process. Okay, everyone see the slides okay? Okay, great. And just for those who are unfamiliar with some of the settings, the most user-friendly way to a lot of times view the slides and the presenter is that side-by-side view. If you just go up in the settings, you'll be able to choose that. And then there's a line in the middle that you could make the PowerPoint bigger or the presenter bigger there. Okay, so we are talking about what Urban has quote unquote considered a possible food addiction. And we've already done the part one of the live demo. But to be honest, there's just been pieces of this treatment model that I wondered if it was as effective for food. And I have seen these tools be super effective for many of the clients that I've worked with like shopping addiction, drinking, just a variety of different substances like Xanax. I've seen it to be really powerful and effective. But in my personal experience, I've only had 2 cases with binge eating, and it really kind of fell flat. And so after working with Urban, I heard then Donna Fish's podcast on the Feeling Good podcast, and where she talked about like really needing to address the restrictive eating in order to be effective in treating the binge eating or the food addiction. So that made me think on how our tools actually sometimes feed into restrictive eating, like controlling the temptation, stimulus control of removing it from your home. And then the other piece that I had also thought about was one of the Sunday trainings with Dr. Burns and Dr. Levitt. They worked with a woman who talked about wanting to stop eating like kettle chips at night. And there was a piece in there that started to feel like she was really labeling like this food is bad, this food is horrible. And in the devil's advocate, it really felt like she was also feeding into restrictive eating. And so like Dr. Burns' current use of the devil's advocate is really looking at that specific food, the donuts, the chips, and then really trying to deprive ourselves of it. And what we see is any sense of deprivation and restriction may actually lead to more overeating and binge eating. And so that's when I've started to just do a bit more research and consultation on this. I was not able to meet with Donna Fish. She didn't end up having enough time for this semester. She had to create some time for her students because she's also teaching a class. But I've connected with a registered dietitian and have gained a lot of valuable information that I'm really excited to share with you. And then kind of merging the TEAM and the evidence-based approaches for treating food addiction or binge eating. Okay, so a little bit about me. Most of you already know me, but for those of you who are new, I am an LPC, but my first license was actually as an LADC, a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. Treating addictions was actually my very first passion. I've been in practice now for 12 years in a variety of different settings, starting off with residential treatment, treating people with drugs and alcohol problems, but also just seeing a wide variety of different traumas and how addiction can manifest through that. And then I've been in private practice for 5 years, mainly using TEAM-CBT. I am the first TEAM-CBT therapist and trainer in Oklahoma, actually. And I am a mom of 2 girls. And my husband is a bit introverted, so he didn't care for his photo to be up here. But we've been together for 13 years, and these are our girls. Tavia's 5.5. She started kindergarten. And this is Eiley. She is now 19 months, and a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but also it's just the best a lot of times. Okay, so I've gone through the demo with Urban, but I've made some tweaks since then. But this is just a brief overview of TEAM, the TEAM as the acronym, and how we can use it to treat binge eating and quote unquote food addiction. So I learned there is a binge eating scale. I think this will be more effective than the urges and cravings scale that we currently have through TEAM-CBT, because that one's more catered to drugs and alcohol. And this is what my friend, the registered dietitian that I consulted with, this is what she uses in her 10-week program to treat binge eating. And for the testing portion, they don't do it every session. I think you can. But they do it, it's a 10-week program, and they do it before they start the program at 5 weeks and then at the very end. And when I asked her about the effectiveness, she said, I don't want to be arrogant or trying to sound like it's too good to be true, but really almost all of the people that go through their program, this Am I Hungry program and evidence-based approach for binge eating, stop binge eating by the end of it. So I thought that was really exciting, and with evidence, like with testing and measurement, just like we do in TEAM. And so it's showing up through measurements that there's success, and that's really exciting. And then of course we do empathy and the 5 secrets with the clients, but there are these certain aspects that may be important for us to explore. And if this is a population you're passionate about working with, you can even put this in your intake forms, but it could be helpful to just understand at what age did you start to hear that your body's not okay, and you're starting to have certain rules and certain things you need to change about your body and about food. There was a moment in time with most people with binge eating or food addiction that they learned to stop trusting their bodies. Like you can't trust yourself. You can't trust when you're hungry. You will be out of control if you let yourself have permission to eat certain things, and so then you need to control it. So just asking these different aspects can help us to understand the messages that they've learned about their body and around food. It's common for children to be told, like, finish your plate because of starving children in some other parts of the world. And the truth is, you're not helping any starving children anywhere by overeating or finishing your plate. But we get that message a lot. Possibly also there could have been trauma in their history. And as we know with trauma, sometimes to survive, you just learn to disconnect from your body. And so you do then stop listening to hunger cues. You do then just feel unsafe with connecting with your body. And so trauma can play a part in it as well. And currently TEAM-CBT's conceptualization of binge eating, I think, is kind of simplistic. And I think it's just a lot more complex than, oh, I just do this because it tastes good. I think there's a lot more layers to it. Okay, and then you could explore more about like first memories around food, and when did they turn to food other than for just quenching hunger. And then we could understand when did that start? What were the triggers? Was it to cope with trauma? Was it just messages from family that they needed to engage in food in a different way other than using it to treat hunger? And other things you can explore is just, what is life like when you're binging? What is life like when you're restricting? And that the point of those questions is to really just understand, likely there are themes of certain triggers that feeds into these habits here. And then, of course, you want to do a lot of empathy with the client. So we've done some measurements with Urban, we've done empathy, and the assessment of resistance. We've done the miracle cure question, which I didn't put in here, but the magic button, you just want to see, do they really want to change this habit? I think we could really change the triple paradox into a binge restrict triple paradox, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then you've already seen me demonstrate, or those of you who were here during the last time, you've seen me demonstrate voicing the resistance and the motivation script. And I'll go a little bit more in depth with that later on in the slides. Okay, our current methods. I've already touched on this at the beginning, but it may be problematic. Our current methods may actually feed into diet culture and the restrictive eating cycles. You'll even see in the habits and addiction log, it talks about like you need to diet in order to, like in one of the distortions, it talks about like dieting. And also the pieces of the self-control thoughts. What we're seeing is control is the problem, not the solution when it comes to treating binge eating. And I'm just going to use binge eating and food addiction interchangeably. Why control is the problem is that that's part of diet culture. Control is what we need when we're following rules of a diet. And we want to shift it from now I need to control myself, where there's shame and like just seeing yourself as someone who's weak or who lacks willpower, to actually just changing your relationship with food. And I think these tools have been really effective with treating other things that weren't a basic need, like treating addiction to shopping, alcohol, cigarettes, Xanax. I've seen it to be really successful with all of those populations. But with food, we actually need to change our relationship with it instead of cutting it out. So we want to change the mindset from needing to be in control to just being in charge. And that means I get to make choices. And I'll share a little bit more about that later. Yeah, I already shared with you how the devil's advocate to fight the temptation may actually lead to a sense of deprivation. Stimulus control as well, like remove it from your home, actually tells you like you can't trust yourself, and you need to also deprive yourself and not go there. Okay, and through their research with this program, it's called Am I Hungry? Mindful Eating for Binge Eating, that 10-week program to treat binge eating. Their research just shows restrictive eating really worsens binge eating and overeating. Okay. So this is my friend, Christina Duty. She is here in Oklahoma, which I feel so blessed for. She is such a wealth of knowledge. And she's a unique registered dietitian where she's had training in the behavioral health aspect, but she's also a CEDRD, that's a certified eating disorder registered dietitian. It's a special certification that she's taken a couple of additional years for training in. And that's through IADEP. It's a really world-renowned organization, the International Association of Eating Disorders Professionals is where she received her certification. And so she does these programs, the Am I Hungry programs, and they have been shown clinically, they're clinically valid treatment to show that stopped binge eating for the almost all the people who go through the program. And not only did they stop binge eating by the end of the 10 weeks, many of the participants said that they even improved their scores on a 1-year follow-up. So not only did it improve by the end of the 10 weeks, it continued on. And the interesting thing is what they found was the few people who went through the program and who went back on a restrictive dieting program, they were the ones who had worse BES scores, the binge eating scale. So that again just shows that dieting and restrictive eating is really counterproductive to treating binge eating. So I just think that message is really interesting and maybe even counterintuitive because you think, oh, it is all about just needing more control of the process. But I think this is a powerful message to learn. Okay. Yeah, Marina in the chat saying it just makes so much sense. Restriction only enables the binge eating, just as resisting anxiety only escalates it. Yeah, what a great point. And Christina also sees like a lot of eating disorders, including binge eating, is just an exacerbation of anxiety. And so the more we just try to suppress a lot of this, I think the more it can worsen for sure. Okay, so what is binge eating? This is a new diagnosis actually since 2013. And basically just seeing recurrent episodes. It lasts at least, or that goes on for at least once a week for 3 months. So this is just the official criteria for the diagnosis. And you're also eating, it's a discrete period of time, and how they just define the binges, it's just significantly larger amount of food than most people would eat in a similar circumstance. There's just the feeling like you can't stop or control your eating, or how much you are eating. And then we'll often see too, there's a lot of distress about the binge eating. And even after the binge, there may be even feelings of depression, hopelessness, self-hatred, guilt, suicidal thoughts. And what distinguishes BED, binge eating disorder, from bulimia is there isn't often compensatory measures of either purging, vomiting, or excessive exercise. But often it'll follow a restrictive eating cycle, or a restrictive eating cycle will often follow a binge. Okay, so the binge eating cycle. So that was the official DSM criteria. And this is just the traits that Dr. Michelle May and Carrie Anderson have seen in their population. So Dr. Michelle May is the creator of the Am I Hungry program. And they are actually both recovered from their own struggles with binge eating. And Christina Duty has also experienced her own personal journey through eating disorders. And I always think that's powerful when there's personal experience and then they see success through this new treatment approach that they've put together. Okay, so traits that they've seen, you're just eating until you're uncomfortably full, large amounts of food, even when you're not hungry. It's often rapidly. A lot of secrecy, I think, and embarrassment, just as I'm thinking of the 2 clients that I had worked with, just a lot of secrecy, embarrassment. There's a secret stash, but a lot of shame. And most people, even close family, don't know about it because it's done privately. And again, those are often the consequences afterwards. So all intuitive eaters will overeat from time to time. And then sometimes there's just regret, like, oh, I ate too much. And then naturally, I'll just balance it out later while I listen to my body. But with binge eating, again, there's just a lot of emotional consequences afterwards. It just swings in mood, really affecting self-esteem and self-worth, feeling disgusted with themselves. Okay. And so I'm sharing this not from a space of me being an expert who's seen a lot of results, because I've actually, after seeing like with the 2 clients where it kind of fell flat, I have even been hesitant to offer it when I'm doing specificity, to even offer it as a problem area for them to work on. But I did actually start 2 weeks ago with one client who's also struggling with a history of binge eating that's gotten better, but continues to come back from time to time. And I'm already starting to see more success and improvements than I've seen before. So I just have one case study of the beginnings of success as we're moving forward towards this. So yeah, just to be completely transparent that this isn't from an experience of like doing a lot of good work with it. This is just me trying to pull together information that I think could possibly be a lot more effective in the long run. Okay. All right, so we're now looking at, instead of restrictive eating and binge eating, we want to look at mindful eating. And mindful eating is just an awareness of your eating cycles. And I'll walk with you really specifically on what they mean. But this is the philosophy behind it on how we can be more effective in treating binge eating, is really knowing that all food can be a part of a healthy diet. Truly, from this point on, no food is forbidden. No food has too much carbs, fats, etc. No more shouldn'ts and no more food rules. And that it's okay to also eat for pleasure. I think sometimes there's guilt in that. And the main people I've worked with have been women. And I think there's a space in society where it's like you should control your appetite. You should control your appetite for food, for sex, for pleasure. And this is giving us permission that it's okay to eat for pleasure. It's okay to really love food and to enjoy food, and it can be balanced with eating for nourishment. Okay, and we've already talked about how restrictive eating, dieting worsens overeating and binge eating. That deprivation, and if you think of our treatment model too, our process resistance, how we conceptualize process resistance is that if the client wants to be successful, they have to be willing to go through discipline and they have to be willing to be deprived. And I think that's true and effective with like being deprived from the alcohol initially, from gambling, from shopping. But with food, we actually don't want a sense of deprivation, because the more I'm told I can't have it, the more I really want it. And that may actually be the message that's led to this point of food addiction or binge eating. Okay, I see a couple of good questions, and I'll address that here in the next couple of slides. Okay, and then we see this eat, repent, repeat cycle. So I eat, and because I have this message that food is bad, I repent, I feel guilty, I feel like I really need to restrict and control myself. And that actually leads me to repeat the same vicious cycle over and over again. Okay, in restrictive eating, food is labeled as good or bad, but food is also used as your moral compass. I've been good all day. I've been bad because I ate that pizza or that pasta, or I ate the whole bag of potato chips. And it's really removing seeing food as your moral compass, that you are just a kind, good person, regardless of what you had chosen to eat. And it's all about actually just shifting your relationship with food. Okay. I really love this message. If you can't imagine eating a certain way for the rest of your life, don't even do it for a day, because that's the process that will lead to that yo-yo dieting, whether you're cutting out carbs or whatever else. And I think this is true as well for activity or exercise. If you don't see yourself doing this for the rest of your life, whether you're going to the gym 5 days a week or just hardcore working out, if you don't see yourself doing that for the rest of your life, don't do it for even a day, because that will lead to that yo-yo dieting and weight gain and weight loss that just really wreaks havoc on our physical system, our psychology, and our spirit too. Okay. So good question on with the bulimia. We can all get back to intuitive eating, but there are some exceptions according to Christina. Okay, I'm making sure I'm seeing the questions and addressing them. Okay. There are a lot of overlaps. This mindful eating, the exception is with anorexia. where, especially she said, the younger that they start, the harder it is to actually get to intuitive eating. It's almost like the default of the system is to restrict. And so they may actually need a meal plan, at least initially. And she says, not to give a hopeless message, but sometimes for the rest of their lives, they may actually need more structured eating. Most cases of bulimia, she actually wouldn't use mindful eating to treat it. Sometimes they often also need a meal plan just to get them stabilized and nourished. There are some cases of bulimia that she will use this with, and she said if it's not severe, like severe cases could be like 10 times of purging a day, but if it's more like once or twice a month, and then you see that they're able to really gain these other coping skills, then you could really use mindful eating to get them back into intuitive eating. Another exception that I've just learned is ARFID. I've never heard of ARFID before, but ARFID is a condition of avoidant restricted food intake disorder, where there actually are physiological, just sensory issues with certain foods. And so it's basically, I don't know if you heard of an ape and a picky eater, and they just have not a wide range for a palate for different varieties of food. And there may also be even like a lot of anxiety when it comes to trying new food. Like I'm gonna choke when I try new food, and I'm really anxious when I try new food. So it'll be a little bit harder for them to get into intuitive eating, and they may need like a lot of exposure therapy to try a variety of different foods. And yeah, so for her, she'll actually like bring a variety of different foods, or they'll go out to eat in order to treat ARFID. So if they just do intuitive eating, they may actually be really malnourished because they don't eat enough variety. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Madeline is, yeah, the book is great. Yeah. So Urban, I hope you feel special. I did read the book. I've looked through the workbook. I've done the consultation just to see how this treatment approach can be just a lot more effective in this process. Okay. So I do highly recommend it. I think I had shown the picture there, but you can buy the book and the workbook through their website, which I link at the end. And you could also buy it on Amazon. Just the book by itself was a lot cheaper on the Kindle. For some reason, when I looked it up yesterday, I didn't see the Kindle version anymore. But when I bought the Kindle version, it was just like, I believe, $9. And now I'm only seeing the paperback, which is $19. But yeah, I do highly recommend it if you're interested in it, or if you've related to just seeing the cycles of overeating or binge eating and restrictive eating in your own life. I just think it's just such a beautiful book that's compassionate towards the individual, and it's evidence-based, which is always a plus. Okay, so again, the philosophy of mindful eating is we want to get back into listening to our body wisdom and to really know that it's there. And with the few exceptions that I had mentioned, that it is there. And they say people with binge eating really can get back to listening to their body wisdom again. And it's really letting go of the external measures. And this is the piece that's crucial. So if we really trust our body and get back to that space, our body actually naturally seeks balance, variety, and moderation. And so sometimes the fear is like, oh, if I just let myself eat pasta or pizza, I'll just go out of control. They just find that if you stop telling yourself that it's forbidden and depriving yourself of it, eventually your body will get tired of it. No matter if it's your favorite food or the best meal, eventually your body will tire of it because it will seek variety. So you may initially, when you start this process, maybe all you want is pasta and pizza. And then ultimately, your body will start to want a little bit more variety. Then it may want balance with other food groups. And then often, once we start to listen to our bodies again, it'll want moderation and balance too. So I do love this message that you can trust yourself. Hunger doesn't follow a clock. It's more about listening and being in tune with yourself. And this is why they have an issue with Weight Watchers, is because it's saying still, you can't trust your system. You need this external point system in order to be successful. So you're still using the scale or a point system to tell you how much and what you should eat. Okay. Issues with Vyvanse. Vyvanse is a stimulant. It's the FDA-approved drug for binge eating. And the one of the women that I worked with was on Vyvanse. And the issue with this is it is a stimulant, just like Adderall, just like meth, cocaine, and it will suppress your appetite. So it takes away your hunger cues. And so it makes it a little bit harder to get into mindful eating and intuitive eating. And some SSRIs may also affect that as well. And so with Vyvanse, it may be an important piece to work on weaning off of that. But some SSRIs, Christina has talked about, like, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach, but it's important to tune into other cues if you're not feeling hungry, whether then I'm feeling like low energy, I'm just kind of tired in my body, it's harder for me to concentrate. That may be the body's way of telling themselves they need food and fuel for their system. Okay, and then we really want to take the focus away from weight loss and shrinking your body. This mindset also often, like, the more I just want to shrink and get to a certain size in order to be good enough, the more it feeds into restrictive eating. And then that will actually lead into more of that yo-yo dieting and overeating. Okay, and even though we do take the focus away from weight loss and just shrinking your body, they see that most people who begin to change their relationship with food and engage in mindful eating again, and your body's getting back into balance, variety, and moderation just naturally, you do actually go back to a set point weight. A set point weight is different for every single person. But Portia de Rossi, who I'm not sure, most people probably know, she's Ellen DeGeneres' wife. She had written a book called Unbearably Thin, struggled with her own bulimia, struggles with binging and purging. And she said, regardless of what I've tried to do, because she was a model and really had to get thin, she would always bounce back when she started to eat intuitively again, would always bounce back to 130 pounds. And that was her set point weight. And for some people, it may actually be, 180. And it just depends on, like, since you were a child, where you fall is likely where you'll be as an adult too. So if you're like in the 85th percentile pretty consistently by 4 or 5, then it would be unrealistic to try to get to a more of like a 50% set point weight. Yours may be actually a little bit higher. And I think the resistance for some of this work is then I'd have to really accept myself at my set point weight. For some, so if they don't get to a set point weight and they're still at a space where, they just can't seem to lose any weight at all. And even though we're trying to take the focus away from that, it still is important for some people, and it is still something that we can work with. And she says, then you can, and Sori had also mentioned this in an email to me, to actually just get medically checked out, do a full metabolic panel to really see, are there other things going on physiologically? Unfortunately, from Christina's experience, she said, for most people, there actually isn't any issues with thyroid or anything else in their system or hormones. For most people, this may just be their set point weight. And the large majority of the time, they are still super healthy. They're still able to do what their body needs to do or what they want their body to do. So it is working towards acceptance, which we do have a lot of great tools for. But for others, they may actually find a solution that's medical, and that could be important to look into when they do their metabolic panel. And she also talked about it's important to find a doctor who is just more aware of binge eating, so they don't give certain messages about, oh, you just need to restrict or you just need to completely cut out sugar or certain things from your system, because unfortunately we're still hearing those messages from the medical providers as well. I thought this was a cool message, that even people with pre-diabetes and diabetes, their diabetes can be managed through mindful eating without any need for insulin. And she's seen a lot of that in her practice, which I thought was just really hopeful. And it's all about listening to your body. Even with diabetes, no food is forbidden, but maybe you don't eat fast food 3 times a day, because when you listen to your body, you don't feel really good by the end of that. You can also have juice and soda, but maybe instead of the 44 ounce, you just listen to your body, and maybe the 8 ounce is all that you've needed. Okay, and so they created this mindful eating cycle. What does it mean now? So that's the philosophy behind it, some of those messages that I just shared with you. And then this is just what clients can do for an awareness journal. They actually are really against food diaries, because that actually leads us to continue to almost like have an external system to track what you're eating, so you can then be in control of yourself. And it also just makes your life really revolve around food and tracking your intake. And our goal is actually to just let food fall into the background. It's an important piece of life at certain points of the day, but you don't need to track it throughout the day, day in and day out, on how much you've eaten or drank. Okay, so instead of the food diary, they talk about just having an awareness journal, and you're just walking through this cycle here. Sorry, give me a second. Of the why, when, what, how much, and where. This is just the mindful eating cycle to just begin to give you more awareness. And so when clients first start, they can start to just have an awareness journal of exploring why am I eating? When am I eating? And to just have more of an awareness for themselves. So there's 4 eating cycles. There's intuitive. Then we'll see there's overeating, which all intuitive eaters overeat from time to time. Overeating can be a normal part of a healthy eating process. Then there's binge eating, and then there's restrictive eating. Okay, so if we're exploring the whys, the why you eat is actually like what cycle, what is driving a certain cycle, but what cycle am I in right now too? And so if my why is the main purpose is like, I'm hungry, I just need to nourish my body, I need fuel for my body, then that's a part that kind of reflects your intuitive eating. If I'm overeating, a lot of times I didn't really use hunger to assess when to start eating. So I don't know when to stop, because it wasn't to treat hunger. Often when we're overeating, the main purpose is it's really pleasurable, it's for distraction. And underlying the whys is sometimes it's, I'm stressed, I'm overworked, I'm lonely, I'm bored. And so I'm bored and I'm just needing this for pleasure. And this allows us to just begin to understand the whys and some of those emotional triggers. And sometimes we overeat because, I'm celebrating, or the food, the meal, all people as intuitive eaters, I am a really passionate intuitive eater myself, that the meal just tasted really good and I just wanted more. And I knew that I was going to be super full by the end of that, but it felt worth it because it just tasted wonderful. And as a passionate intuitive eater, I can honestly say, like, I could understand why there are moments we turn to food for distraction, to numb out, to escape. Because in my own personal journey through postpartum depression and anxiety, even in really dark spaces when I was really hopeless, even suicidal, I've honestly have said that I felt like food had saved me. Like for those moments when I could just pause and connect with a good meal, it felt like everything was going to be okay. And so I think there's a piece in this that can just really normalize that food has always been around since we were children to really comfort us and nourish us. And it's okay to turn to that. We're just looking at different ways to change the relationship so it's not that all the time. Excuse me. Okay, so in their awareness journals, they're starting to explore why and what food cycle am I in right now, or what eating cycle. For binge eating, it does overlap a lot with the overeating, but it feels more extreme. And then it's often more destructive physically, emotionally, psychologically. And so what we see with binge eating is it's often there to just help me regulate, moderate, and balance my physical, emotional, and mental state. It's often there to try to meet a need that's not being met. So it's there to help to numb me out, escape discomfort, escape judgment and worry. And then why in the restrictive eating is it's just driven by rules. And it's either your food rule or it's some expert's food rule. And I remember Oprah talking about, she's just like talking about food had still been vulnerable for her for a lot of parts of her life. She's also been through a lot of trauma, sexual trauma, neglect, abuse, and has tried so many different diets. And I remember, like, in one of her interviews, she's like, I found something that's worked. I just don't need to eat after 7 p.m. I'm working with this expert, a world-renowned, some food expert, who told her, you just don't need to eat after 7 p.m., not even one single grape. And then that's what you need to do to, like, the metabolism slows down, blah, 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 after 7 p.m. And then that's why you can't lose weight, because you're eating after 7 p.m. And again, that's an external rule that she continued to follow. And of course, it didn't last very long. And then just continued to go back to that yo-yoing again. So it's just following certain rules in the restrictive eating. Okay, let me watch the time. So it's 11:13. We're going to 11:30. Okay, let me go through a lot of this. Just letting them be aware of when they're eating. And so using this hunger and fullness scale for their body. And so a lot of times we want to eat when it's intuitive, when I'm actually connecting and pausing and tuning in and, oh, I'm actually hungry. And sometimes when we've numbed out that sensation for so long, or when we've eaten not when we're hungry, we may actually not even sure what it feels like anymore when we're hungry. And so it's just connecting with some of those sensations. If I'm tuning in with my body, is my stomach growling? Is there churning? And if I wait until I'm hungry, food will be just more enjoyable and pleasurable then. Am I feeling just some low energy? Am I feeling fuzzy and unfocused? And so when I'm starting to feel these sensations, I'm usually at around the hungry. And I could wait a little bit longer, but I may get to the space where I'm starving, and that would be important to listen to my body. And even just have certain foods and snacks available. So it's not stimulus control to remove food, it's actually having access to meet your body's needs when I need it. So having snacks at work, having snacks at home that you enjoy, that you can connect with. And listening to your body, like sometimes you just may want a different variety of snacks too. It's important, they say, to not get to that space where you're ravenous, where if you've been restricting, you may get to the space where you're ravenous. If you're just trying to control your appetite, you would get to that space. Or if you're just not listening to your body and then you're ravenous, you're much less likely to eat mindfully. And then you're much more likely to overeat and binge, because your body thinks it's starving, like truly at that moment. Okay. And so then in their awareness journal, they want to see, what am I eating? And this could suggest what cycle they're in. So if you're an intuitive eater, you usually eat things that you really enjoy and that you love, and you're conscious of the nutrition when making food choices, but you're not often just choosing things that feels really bland, or I just need to eat carrot sticks and celery sticks, or just eat a chicken breast or something like that, right? That's more of the restrictive eating. If you're overeating, the what you're eating is often just things that maybe are available because you're bored, things that have just been comforting. Your whys really feed into the what. The whys really feed into the what with the binge eating as well. And typically things that help you to numb out are things that, are the sweets or the things that are crunchy. Christina's even found like when they've connected with feelings of anger, they were actually more likely to want things that they can crunch on because they're not meeting their true needs. And so the foods are there to kind of substitute meeting their true needs. So sweets, crunchy, rich, and savory foods. And sometimes it's just whatever is available, like table sugar. Oh, sorry, there's an extra Y. Table sugar, syrup, cake mix, condiments, frozen foods, just whatever is there, because right now I'm having a need that I'm running away from meeting. And so it's just there for me to numb out or to escape. And we've already talked about restrictive eating. The what is just really just limiting my intake. So right now I'm eating no carbs, or I just need to eat something lower in calories or lower in points, so I then can eat later. How am I eating? Intuitive eaters often, not always, but often we're attentive to the food. You may enjoy the food, but it's with intention to satisfy hunger. And it's also with the intention to feel better by the end of eating. So you want to feel better and not worse. And that's just setting the intention of how full do I want to be? I want to feel better. I want to feel satisfied. And I give attention to my food and I enjoy it. Overeating, often in those spaces, it's kind of mindless, automatic, or quickly, not really slowing down a savor. Same with binge eating. For seeing themselves as someone who just can't control and loves food too much, they're actually not creating space to really slow down and savor and enjoy the food. Sometimes it's a trance-like state. Sometimes I wake up from the trance and then I realize I just finished this whole bucket of M&Ms, but I really didn't take time to savor it and to enjoy it. It could be fast-paced, frenzy, panicked, maybe mindless or even dissociative. I'm really disconnected. Oftentimes it's in secret. And then restrictive eating, it's often controlled and very rigid. And so I'll weigh the food, I'll measure the food, I'll count it, I'll track it. And it's prepared and even consumed in a more controlled and rigid way. How much do I eat? Again, we don't want an external system anymore. How much is actually just measuring, again, that hunger and fullness scale. So instead of like, oh, I did good because I ate this amount of calories, it's actually, as an intuitive eater, I ate to the point of satisfaction, comfortably satisfied. I'm in that 5 or 6. I'm no longer hungry, but I'm pretty satisfied. And I'm not in that space where I just feel completely stuffed or even sick. Okay, so how much with overeating? If I didn't use hunger to tell me when to start eating, then how do I know when to stop? And so with overeating, how much is just sometimes a lot of times to the point of like, I'm just in this very full discomfort stuff space because I'm kind of coping with loneliness or boredom or being overworked or stressed out because my mom has all of these needs. Okay, binge eating, maybe to the point when like the food is completely gone, the movie's over. I only stopped when someone came home, when I felt completely numb or sick, or I pass out. Okay, restrictive eating. How much am I eating? It's a certain amount. It's a certain amount of grams. And the example of never after 7 p.m. is I eat nothing after that. So how much is based on the rules? Okay. And then the last piece in the cycle in their awareness journal is they can connect with where then did I invest my energy? And when they know they're getting back into intuitive eating is after I eat, my energy is no longer consumed around food. My energy then goes towards work, play, possibly exercise, but we really want to look at exercise as enjoyable movement and not like with overeating where sometimes exercise or restrictive eating in response to overeating or binging exercise is used as like penance for the overeating. So the movement is just because it'll feel good for my body and I'll enjoy it. Okay, where does my energy go after I overeat? I'm actually feeling less energetic. And because distraction and pleasure led to my overeating, I may even need to eat more in order to continue some of those goals, right? So the distraction and pleasure didn't last too long, so I may eat more to actually feel better, and it can continue that vicious cycle of continuing to turn into food, even though I'm not hungry, to just cope and distract. Okay, where does my energy go after a binge? A lot of times I'm really sluggish, I'm tired, but many people talk about panic and hiding the evidence. I've had this with the one client where it fell flat. We had a lot of success in treating trauma and certain messages around food with her mom and body image, but it did fall flat with the binge eating. And she did talk about, like, I'm panicked after I just binged on all of this candy, so I'm really trying to replace the stash. I go to the store to replace it so it doesn't look like I've eaten all of my daughter's sweets. I'm really angry at myself, even rageful. I could be hopeless, guilty, suicidal. I hate myself. I feel disgusted with myself. And then my energy also goes towards planning to be good again tomorrow. I'll do this on Monday. I'll start this really rigid exercise routine. Okay, and then restrictive eating. Again, the exercise, the restriction of food is to make up for being bad. And so I need to stick to this. I need to be stronger to stick to a diet. Okay, so the best of both worlds, that was the piece with mindful eating. And then how can we combine this with TEAM? So let me pause to look at some of the comments and see if there's thoughts or questions. Okay, so Richard, have you completed an interpersonal downward arrow to uncover Urban's relationship with food? We have not done that. I really like that idea. There are pieces in here that talks about uncovering and what is the food doing for me that I'm really excited to share about. But I love the idea of using the interpersonal downward arrow. That's cool. Marina, here is a brain thought experiment for restricted eating. Don't think about the pink elephant. Oh yeah. Don't think about the pink elephant and then what happens. Exactly. That's so much like with intrusive thoughts, right? Like treating anxiety with intrusive thoughts. Don't go there. You're fine. You're not going to die. And then that's all you think about. It just sticks harder. And so you actually then want it more. Heather, I would imagine accepting the set point weight can be very challenging. Absolutely. I think there's pieces of resistance and motivation that we really need to address in that. And especially when the set point weight is there, are overall really still healthy. Their body's able to do whatever they need to do. Accepting their set point weight could be really crucial, because the alternative is, if I don't accept it, I can just continue the restrictive eating cycle that then leads into overeating and binging, right? And then that could be the consequence. The self-acceptance, letting go of control, that is definitely a cost. And I have that in the triple paradox. It's so hard with our culture, especially I think messages around being good enough when you're a certain size, especially now. There's a lot of research where men and women, but especially young girls, are bombarded with about 500 to 600 images a day of what they should look like in order to be good enough. How smooth your skin should be, how big your breasts should be, how your hips should be, your height, your skin. And it does really make it hard to accept our bodies as they are, for sure. It's kind of painful to really think about, like, most, maybe all of the women I've worked with, I haven't met one or too many that hasn't had some insecurities or just not feeling good enough in their bodies the way that it is, right? And I've related to that same journey myself, for sure. Marina, loving this approach so much. Neurobiology, why can't I say that? Neurobiologically, every time people go on a diet, the set point has a danger of being reset. Yeah, absolutely. To the last point of the weight gain. And when people try to lose weight at a certain point, the brain does not know that. Oh, that's interesting science. And instead, it may interpret as a crisis, and it remembers the last weight point that it needs to bring itself back to the crisis dieting. Wow. Yeah. Love taking the shame out of the food being comforting and emotional. For sure. I think there's just pieces of like what Heather's saying, that we're shamed for eating for pleasure. And like, yes, let's enjoy food and let's turn, we all have eaten for comfort. Um, yeah, and it even talked about in the book that we've all been emotional eaters. That food has been there from the beginning of time to comfort us. Just think of the baby turning to the breast for comfort, right? That's normal and healthy. Okay, Urban, sometimes it's about finding something to satisfy and trying more and more different snacks to fill that missing piece. Um, like you don't know what exactly you want that will bring fulfillment, but that wasn't it. So the next snack maybe is the thing that could fulfill you until you're over full. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely hit on that as well. Really listening to the needs. What am I actually trying to fill up? And then meeting that sometimes. And then it's always a legitimate option to eat anyway to fulfill yourself. Okay, Ed, can you explain this a little bit more? Devil's advocate to fight the temptation, stimulus control. Yes, for sure. There's a whole slide on that, Ed. So great question. Any other thoughts or questions so far about the mindful eating? And then I'll talk about how we can now really incorporate it into TEAM. Okay, let me know if there are questions. Okay, so this is my thought. We've had the triple paradox previously about the specific food. So for Urban, it was like certain sweets or chocolate. For others, it may be the chips. And then we've only focused on the benefits of continuing to eat that food, the values to comfort myself, etc. And then what are the costs of letting go of that food? It's again being willing to deprive yourself. Again, I thought that may actually not be the best approach. So I'm thinking of now changing it to the binge restrict triple paradox. And it's actually just addressing the behaviors instead of a specific food and alienating and shaming that specific food and trying to deprive yourself of that food. I think that's what we did previously. And I think it'll be more beneficial to look at what are the benefits of the behavior of binging, the benefits and values of the behaviors of restricting, and the cost of change is actually getting into mindful eating. What are the costs? I may actually have to fear losing control initially, but just like I believe it was Heather who had said, I'd have to work on letting go of the focus on weight loss, accepting my body as it is now. Oftentimes, Christina said in her work, she does see people lose weight more often than not and get to a set point weight that overall they're happier with. But yeah, there may be still at a certain space where you have to work on accepting your body as is, especially when you've gone through all of this process and you're mindfully eating and you're engaging in enjoyable movement. There may be a space where you're still not feeling like my body is good enough according to whatever messages. And then I think there's a lot of work that we would do then to heal those messages about the body and accepting it as it is, for sure. These are some of the benefits that Urban had already shared, but then I've already also added certain ones that have been brought up through the book or ones that I've thought about with the couple of clients that I've had. But the benefits of binging helps me to cope. Urban's comment just said it helps to kind of fill me up when I'm feeling kind of empty, right? And it's trying to meet some other need, but in this moment, it at least helps to fill me up temporarily. There were stories too on like people just rebelling. So when I binge, it's almost like a way of almost regaining a voice. And so I can think of my client whose mom has always told her like, your sister's the more attractive one, you are too big. And when I was working with her, like from my perceptions, I thought she was, from most people's perspective, is attractive. Definitely not in a space where you know, she really had this ingrained message of, I'm too big, I'm not good enough, your sister's the pretty one, you're so vanilla, you're so plain. And so when her mom started to control her intake of food, once she became an adult in college and she just had all the freedom, she was out of the home, she said, I'm realizing like when I binged, it was almost like an F you, mom, F you for all of the hurt and the trauma that you've put on me, and I can do whatever I want, right? There was a story in the book too of the woman with a husband who was like really judgmental about her weight and like judgmental of what she chose to eat. And so the binging, the benefit of that too is I can rebel against you and I could just do what I want. And the value in that is just I value autonomy. I value having a voice. And then you all could read through the rest of that. But often with the restricting, the benefits of that is I feel at least some sense of control, empowerment. I feel like then I'm fixing some bad choices and maybe there's hope for change. The cost of change is I have to be willing to actually sit with some negative feelings, exploring my true needs. There probably needs to be some exposure therapy, whether I need to start dating or find this companion outside of food, or start having a voice about something. That's the cost of change with doing mindful eating again. And there is going to be a sense of loss, I think, but it's the loss of that behavior that's helped me to quickly escape. Okay. We've already gone through this process with Urban. So after I do the triple paradox, I always rate, where's your motivation to change this habit? And it's no longer with change with eating donuts. It's changing with the binge and restrict cycle. And to get into mindful eating, where's your motivation? Then we voice the resistance. Why change? Considering all of these powerful benefits of binging, you can feel in control again when you're restricting. And with mindfulness or mindful eating, you have to work on acceptance of the self. And why would you want to do that? Right. So that's voicing the resistance. And Urban's initial motivation to change was 100. After the triple paradox, it went to 75. And then we did voicing the resistance and it was at 80. And I wonder how it'll change too now that we're doing the binge restrict triple paradox. Okay. Then we can create a motivation script. Why do I want to change? Because they may say, I don't want to accept my body. And so we could voice the resistance. Why would you want to work towards accepting a set point weight when you can just continue to try to find your worth through losing more weight or getting thinner or approaching that more ideal body, right? Why would you want to change? And then they may say, because I'm realizing that trying to continue to shrink my body leads me into actually gaining more weight because then I restrict and then I actually end up yo-yoing and binging. And so maybe there's a voice in there in the motivation script that gives them more of a long-term view of these are the short-term benefits of trying to lose the weight. But maybe the long-term benefit of accepting my set point weight is I could actually maybe stop consuming my life with food, whether I'm thinking about it or controlling it, and I could just live and actually maybe even get to the point where I'm not continuing to gain weight because of the yo-yo dieting. Right? Why let go of binging, restricting, and why change my relationship with food into more mindful eating? Okay, combining mindful eating with TEAM. One of the tools that they have is just really getting in tune with yourself. So before I eat, it's just pausing. This is not restricting or telling myself I shouldn't. This is really listening to my body, connecting with that body wisdom. Let's pause. Let's take a breath. Step away from the food trigger and just really tune in. What is my mind thinking? Is it thinking, oh, I need to celebrate? Is it thinking, my mom is stressing me out? What is my body wanting? Is my body wanting the food to be nourished? And really connecting with those needs there. And connecting the mind, body, and heart scan is what am I feeling right now? Am I just bored and lonely? Or am I just really needing fuel for my body? So it's just pausing and being a bit more mindful in this process. That's the starting point. So we already have the awareness journals to connect with the cycles of the why, when, etc. And then before I eat, it's just making time to pause and to connect with my thoughts, my body's needs, and my feelings. And then there's always a decision that you can make. We want to go from I'm not allowed, that restrictive thinking, to I get to decide. And to truly know eating anyway is always a legitimate option. We can all choose that at any time. But also know there's other options that I can choose from. I could also redirect my focus at this time, especially if I'm realizing I'm really not hungry, but I'm lonely, I'm bored, etc. Then it's important to just make an exhaustive list with your clients of activities that they can engage in to distract, to revitalize themselves, to relax, to nurture, and activities that include people, but activities that they can do alone too, because we don't want it to be dependent on, like Urban had said in Problem Solution, he could spend time with his kids. But what if there's moments when they're not there? Then we want things that we can also autonomously engage for ourselves. And then it talks about in the book that just having a list of eating incompatible activities can be helpful, like playing tennis, you're sewing, you're knitting. You need to use both hands. These are activities that that are not compatible with eating, just to begin to redirect my focus. There may be another really important option though. So you could eat anyway, you could redirect your focus. Again, you get to decide. Being in charge is now not about I have to control myself and not eat. But you could also address your true needs. How do we connect with that? So I'll talk about that later on in the next slides. But if I always choose one or two where I just distract or redirect, or I eat anyway, I may really miss this important piece of addressing my underlying needs. Then it may continue to drive the binge eating cycle. And so sometimes choosing option number 3 could be a really important option too in this treatment. Okay, hidden emotion. I had never really thought about binge eating as a form of exacerbated anxiety. And in reading through the book, a lot of the examples was like, this is a hidden emotion. Something was bothering them that they weren't giving voice to, they weren't addressing. They're really nice people, and so they swept it under the rug. And then they weren't meeting their true needs or their true desires. And the binge eating, just like anxiety, just like panic attacks, is actually trying to tell us something's really bothering me that I'm not addressing. And so we could use the hidden emotion as an effective tool in treating binge eating. Okay, so I need a brownie may actually mean I need my husband to support me with these kids instead of being on his phone. So I may actually just need to have a hard conversation. We could train them in the 5 secrets to have a conversation to address that. And then it may actually connect with other things like I need comfort, I'm exhausted, I need rest, love, attention, someone to listen to me, companionship, affection. And if you've been told like I shouldn't enjoy sex, it may just say like I need to connect with someone and have my sexual needs be met too. I need enjoyment and satisfaction. And so some powerful cravings may actually be representative of needs going unmet. And we can uncover this with our clients. So Christina had a cool tool where she would look at what are their list of binge foods. So one of her clients, it was pizza and ice cream. And then just uncovering, going back, what is your memories with this food? Let's go back to even your first memories around this food. And the client said, when I was eating pizza and ice cream, every Wednesday, my family would have pizza night and then we would have ice cream afterwards. What was happening, what needs were being met then? We were just having fun, connecting. I felt accepted. I felt no shame around eating those foods. And these are then the needs. How can we recreate that now too? How can you also have fun and connect and feel accepted and really looking at ways to meet those needs without turning to food. And sometimes if you choose to turn to the food, again, it's always a legitimate option. Okay, triggers. Triggers, feelings, need, action plan. This is another type of awareness journal that our clients can get into. So I have two examples that I really liked. So the trigger, this may be one that Urban relates to. I get home from a long day of work. I'm exhausted. You said you felt physically and emotionally drained. So what was the trigger after the long day of work? What am I feeling? And I think it's helpful to use the habits and addiction log to just give them words for feelings. And I was just feeling exhausted, drained, bored. I think the habits log really lays out the emotions really well. That's missing in the mindfulness book. And so we could use that to just help them connect with their feelings. And then what are my needs? I needed comfort. I needed pleasure. I needed rest. And so then they can engage in the self-care voice to meet their needs. And it's never like, oh, you're disgusting. Why do you still want to eat this sweet? It's, of course, you want food. So you could see how that's just a lot more compassionate. Food tastes good. It looks good. It smells good. It feels good. We've always turned to food for comfort and pleasure from the beginning of time. And then it's kind of playing the tape through. And at the same time, the downside afterwards is often you get this temporary pleasure, but then afterwards you're feeling that discomfort, you're feeling regret for the rest of the evening. And so before you head right to that pantry, when you get home, let's look at how can you meet your need for comfort and pleasure? And what are ways that you can transition into the evening routine without going straight to the food, right? So what else gives you pleasure? What are non-edible ways that you can really meet those needs? And so as Urban was saying, I may be trying to meet this need with this food and that snack, but it's actually because I'm not meeting the true need. Action plan. Then instead of going straight to the pantry, I may just comfort myself with a hot shower, wear my favorite sweatshirt that's really comforting and feels good. I could play with the kids. You've talked about that. Connect with the dog. That's my way of connecting and comfort and pleasure. And then I could turn on the TV, listen to music, sit in my favorite chair, read a sports section. But these are different ways that I could really get comfort and pleasure. This is another one that people may relate to where the trigger was after church. Everyone's leaving home to their families. I'm going home to an empty house. I feel lonely. And again, the relationship, the habits log can probably connect them with even other feelings. I'm feeling lonely, inadequate, sad. And what is my need then? I need to feel more connected. And my self-care voice, it's again, never shaming. The shame actually leads into, again, that eat, repent, repeat cycle. And shame will often is that repent part that will lead us into that vicious cycle. So of course you want food. It's always worked for you for comfort and pleasure. And it really is a great companion to fill that lonely void. And again, like I've shared in my struggle with the anxiety and depression and that space of darkness and hopelessness, it really felt good. It truly was a companion that filled me up when I just had a moment to sit and eat. And we really want to validate that. But again, playing the tape through, the downside is afterwards, you do often feel ashamed and you feel like a failure after you binge. So again, what are non-edible ways to get connection if I'm not truly hungry? So then I could actually just make a lunch date with a friend. After church, I could check out the singles group, activities calendar. I could sign up for that photography class that I've really been thinking about. That's a way to connect. And it doesn't have to be with another person. It could be connecting with a creative activity that I really enjoy, but then I could meet that classmate from the photography course too, right? And I will nurture my gentle self-care voice and even seek out support with people who may relate or just someone who can connect with me, who doesn't shame me in these struggles. I thought the double standard could be a cool tool that we could use because we see there's the binge voice The binge voice convinces me to do things that in the afterwards, it's not really truly nurturing, because afterwards I do feel terrible. My body doesn't feel nourished. It feels like it's been almost abused sometimes. My restrictive voice tells me I need to be perfect. I need to do things a really specific way and be in control in order to be happy. And I'm thinking we could look at what is that binge voice saying? What is the restrictive voice saying? And we could use the double standard. If this was a dear friend you really cared about, and they're exactly like you in every way, and they have this binge voice and they have this restrictive voice, what are ways that we can talk back to it that creates more balance? And a voice that's more flexible, supportive, and helpful. This voice is also compassionate, affirming, kind. And so we could find the balance between the two extremes. And again, it's that, of course, it's that validating voice. And it's saying it's helpful to turn to food from time to time. And at times you also deserve to meet your true needs. And in effective ways that don't bring on shame or self-hatred afterwards. Okay, there's another slide that I had with bridging the two voices, and I thought it was after that, but we'll get to there. Abundance thinking. Okay, we've got 15 minutes, we're good. So replacing scarcity thinking with abundance thinking. Scarcity thinking is the thinking that leads us to restrict and then binge. So scarcity thinking is telling ourselves, I won't have this food all the time. And so I better eat it all up now, right? And you could see that probably around the holidays. This meal won't come around again until next year. And there may be that scarcity thinking of like, I need to stop eating this quote unquote bad food. So this is the last time that I get to do this. And it's never the last time, but that scarcity thinking makes you want to binge even more. Abundance thinking instead is I can make turkey and potatoes at any time. That's the truth. I can have a wonderful meal at any time and enjoy it. I am now no longer depriving myself of any food. No food is forbidden. And so if I really want it, I will have it and I will enjoy it. And so if there's like a certain meal that your clients have made to be forbidden, you can slowly actually expose themselves to having that. And when they're listening to their bodies and they truly, really want it, to go ahead and go to that restaurant and order that food, order one portion, go to that the grocery store and buy the ingredients to make that food. The pastas, the carbs are no longer forbidden. So just let yourself have access to it and enjoy it. If it's the bag of chips, it's the sweets. And initially, if you're even removing it from your home, if you're really wanting it, go and buy it, right? Because satisfaction is not just about having any food. And the book, and also Christina has talked about, if I'm really craving and wanting this food, like let's say potato chips, but I'm telling myself I shouldn't, it's bad, I don't want it, then I substitute everything else, right? So then I may eat like a handful of walnuts. That wasn't satisfying. So I'll eat some yogurt and that still wasn't good enough. And then I may just continue to eat everything around that specific food that I was just really wanting. So it may actually lead to more overeating if you're eating around the food that your body was really wanting to feel satisfied. And so it's important to actually just eat the thing that you enjoy from the beginning. And if you eat it from the beginning, you wouldn't have overate and ate around that food. And you would have just gotten to that thing that satisfied you in the first place. Then you're actually less likely to overeat. And when you eat that bag of chips, savor it, enjoy it, be really mindful with it. And then you're much less likely to binge. Binge and mindfulness really can't go hand in hand, right? And they do talk about portioning things out, but it's not portion control. It's just for mindful eating to tune in with your body. And so they say if like a trigger is really like eating off of a whole huge bag of potato chips, it's saying just portion it out to little Ziploc bags. And after you eat one, it's tuning in with your body again. do I feel satisfied? Was this good enough? What else does my body want? And if it's really wanting another bag of chips, then go for it. And then if you're halfway through the second bag of chips and you're tuning in with your body, just reassess, pause, and seeing, is this still satisfying or have I had enough? And then I could close that up and eat it later. I could always eat it later. I'm never now in the deprived mindset. And then that will actually remove the need to eat it all up now while I have it, because I'll go on that diet tomorrow. Okay, so mindful eating, what that means is slow down, really engage your senses, smell the food, connect with the texture. Sometimes that crunch just feels really satisfying. Also, taking smaller bites allows us to savor the flavors better. We see that when we take bigger bites, the flavors are like on the teeth, the gums, but actually if it's smaller bites, you can savor the flavors even better. And just make it an enjoyable present moment, whether you're eating that brownie or chips or whatever, the fruit, really make it an enjoyable present moment. It's also helpful to often sometimes they talk about like you can eat while watching TV, but as much of like the least distracting activities as possible where you're just connecting with the food is helpful. And even if you're eating and watching TV, it's just, again, really tuning in with your body from time to time. Practicing gratitude for your food as you're eating it. And when you eat, it's with intention and attention. So you're giving the food a lot of attention. Again, it's changing that relationship with the food, right? And so if we're looking at like, if I'm dating this food, I will give it my full attention. I don't want to then just eat it like I'm on a date and then I'm texting someone else, or not giving it the full attention. I want to give it the full attention and appreciate it and use it to connect. And then with intention, I intend to feel better after I eat instead of worse. And I could also set intention before I eat of how full do I want to be. So before I eat, I could even sit down. My intention is to eat to the point of comfortable satisfaction. And sometimes you may, like if the meal is really good, I may set an intention to eat until I'm stuffed with it. But oftentimes we don't set an intention to just feel sick or disgusted afterwards physically. Okay, 11:54. Fearless eating and finding balance. So we want to go from being afraid of ourselves and food to fearless eating. And this is Christina's tool on how to bridge the balance between restrictive eating and binge eating. What do you eat on your best day on a diet? On my best day, a lot of times it's in their minds, best day, it's restrictive. I may eat some egg whites, a protein bar for breakfast. I only eat vegetables or a salad for lunch. And then at dinner, I have a protein shake, and that's my best day. So you could kind of see extreme all or nothing thinking. On my worst day, when I'm feeling ashamed, I ate fast food for lunch. I ate a hamburger and French fries for dinner. I binged on ice cream and potato chips before bed. And removing fear from eating is no longer labeling that was when I did good or that was when I did bad. I don't have to be afraid of myself, afraid of food anymore. Balance is bridging the extreme thinking, and I can have foods from both of these days. So a hamburger and French fries is a part of a healthy diet. And sometimes I'm tuning into my body. I probably don't want that 3 meals a day. And then my body will actually naturally want some veggies, or it may actually want water over the pop and fruit. So it's just tuning into my body's needs. And they talk about just creating a speed bump. So a speed bump could be if the portion for that meal, if my intention is to eat to satisfaction, the portion for that meal will probably get me to a space of feeling uncomfortably full. And so the speed bump is just even creating a line in the middle of the plate where I'm going to eat this much. I think this will lead me to satisfaction. And that's just the point to pause and check in with my body. Does it want a little bit more? And if I'm slowing down, I give it 15 to 20 minutes as I'm slowly eating to then decide at the speed bump, do I want a little bit more or have I had enough? And then I could take the rest home. So it's a lot of mindfulness and connecting with the body. I really think the pleasure predicting sheet can also be powerful as we're talking about needing other ways to enjoy life other than food. Incorporating enjoyable movement. Um, some of their things on their pleasure predicting sheet can involve food, like going out to eat with a friend and then or enjoying a meal by themselves. They really can do that. And some items may not involve food, and some items may be with others and some alone. And I've attached this. I think you can click on it on the PDF. It's from the Am I Hungry program. It's 101 things to do besides eat. And sometimes our clients may struggle because they've turned to food mindlessly for a long time to meet various needs that I think it's just good to have a list that you can look from, that you could choose that could really connect with you. And for those who aren't familiar with the pleasure predicting sheet, it just is this 4-column table. What is the activity that I can engage in for pleasure, personal growth, and satisfaction? So I just list that, with whom, and then we engage in it like an experiment. So it could be with myself or with my friend. And then it's an experiment. What's my perceived satisfaction when I do that? And sometimes they may find out that, oh, when I turned to food, it was actually not as satisfying. But when I got a massage or when I took a hot bath, the actual satisfaction was really high. And so this could be an experiment of, again, reconnecting with their needs and nourishing and nurturing themselves on what does really work to give me more satisfaction and pleasure. Okay, I think Ed had a question here, and I want to address that. Okay. Oh, there's been several comments. Explain a little bit more the devil's advocate, stimulus control to remove certain foods. Okay, I think that we'll get into it. Is someone having a comment or a question or a thought?
Diane, I just wanted to mention you don't need to read my comments, please. No need.
Don't need to read your comments. Okay. Thank you, Marina. Okay, so in Ed's question initially, I have a specific slide on how we can tweak those two specific tools, stimulus control and the devil's advocate. Okay, problem solution. In their research, they find that these are the most common types of triggers for people when it comes to food addiction or binge eating. So just the sight and smell of food, just when it's around is a common trigger. Special occasions and holidays, I know Urban's mentioned that. Social events, and then high-risk times like after work, when everyone goes to sleep, people will have just specific high-risk times for themselves. And a lot of times when you're alone and feeling disconnected. And so in the problem solution, we can just anticipate these triggers in advance and really connect with solutions that work, solutions that engage in mindful eating, listening to your body, nurturing yourself in other ways if you're not truly hungry. And then with my problem solution, I always like to look at, okay, we've brainstormed now the solution. How effective is that solution for treating that problem or for overcoming that problem? Okay, so this could answer Ed's question. The devil's advocate has been in the past where Dr. Burns talks about, oh, I really want that donut. How do I fight that temptation? Right? That donut looks so good. How do I talk back to it? I shouldn't eat it. I'm going to feel horrible afterwards. So I should just eat a fruit. And again, I think that feeds into like deprivation. And instead, I think our devil's advocate can be just towards the behavior instead of the specific food. And so the tempting thoughts may be like, go ahead and binge. You'll feel so comforted after a long day. And then talking back to that temptation wouldn't be like, oh, I shouldn't have that donut. But it's like, yeah, I could always choose to eat if I want to. That always feels good. And then I could also choose to do other activities instead of binging to the point where I just feel awful afterwards, right? So we're talking back to the tempting thoughts to engage in the behaviors instead of that specific food. So I think that can be tweaked in that way. Little steps for big feeds and stimulus control. Where is that? Oh, for some reason it's scheduled to be at the top. Stimulus control, instead of like getting rid of all of the foods from my home, I could just remove like high risk binge foods out of sight. But if I'm really wanting that, let myself have it. But we can do stimulus control with a secret stash. The one client that I'm thinking of had a secret stash that none of her family knew about with mint chocolates. And so she can then just do stimulus control with the secret stash where we now, instead of eating in secret, just eat, just be more seen, be more visible, be more comfortable. And we can do some stimulus control with initial like high risk binge foods, but our goal is actually to a lot of times bring all of the foods back into the home and allow ourselves to have whatever food we're wanting. Okay. Little steps for big feats, I think it can be tweaked a little bit as well. So if I'm trying to meet my need for loneliness, thinking of like getting married or finding a relationship could be really overwhelming. I may be less likely to begin like dating, but I could do small steps for connection. And so I could look at like, look up the singles activities list or what's going on. Pick one that I would enjoy and likely engage in. And then just like that other example, one activity is just enrolling in a new class and learning something fun. And then I could connect with a classmate. Another woman had talked about like she was feeling lonely and it felt really overwhelming to talk about dating, but she said she had a coworker that she really liked. And then it was scary, but then she reached out and just asked that coworker to go out to the movies. And so instead of binging for that weekend, which was often her plans of like buying a bunch of food on Friday night, binging Friday and Saturday, she then went out with that friend and that met the need for connection. So it doesn't have to be a big, huge thing where when it is big, we're less likely to follow through. We could just break it down to little steps and we're much more likely to take action if the steps are smaller. Okay, I'm almost done with this and then I'll engage with Urban. Okay, so function over form. Adam, does that answer your questions there on those tools and how I'm tweaking it?
It did, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, function over form is one that's more for body image that I've really liked, and I like it for myself too. So oftentimes we have really critical thoughts about our body, and that's really common. Okay, so I think it's really important, again, to work through resistance. A lot of times the self-criticisms are there for a reason. It's things we've really internalized. And it may feel like the self-criticism continues to allow me to stay in control or not be so lax that I'll just be out of control. It's my way too of like connecting with certain values, right? My self-criticism about my body just is tied to like my desire to socially be appealing to people, to socially connect with people, to avoid rejection. And so the self-criticisms is tied to some deep things. So how does the criticism of my body benefit me? What values does it show when I continue to criticize my body so I could be a certain shape or size? Are they ready to dial it down? So how much self-criticism do they want to keep in order to keep some of those benefits, but shed the cost of the pain of continuous criticism and shame? And then once we've worked through the resistance and they're ready to change the self-criticism, then I think we could do a lot of different things with it, the double standard, etc. But we could also use a tool called function over form. And this tool just really allows us to, instead of criticizing our form and shape, which is a lot of things we can't change, we then just really connect with appreciating what it does for us. And so we think about, what does my body do for me that I really appreciate? So instead of like, I hate my big thighs, it's disgusting, my legs really help me to move. My legs are strong, helps me to kick that soccer ball, helps me to dance and have rhythm. Because I know Urban really enjoyed dancing. Some people talk about like, oh, my stomach is disgusting. We need, have it to be a certain size or shape to be good enough. And instead, it's just like, well, my stomach's actually there to prevent my guts from spilling out. And it protects my inner organs. It protects my liver, my pancreas, my intestines, and also like my core. Instead of like shaming the shape, it's like my core allows me range of motion and to sit and to stand and to keep balance. And so I really like that this tool just honors the body and the function and what it does for us. Christina even does a tool where she, and I think it's also in the mindful eating program, where they write a letter to their body, and then the body writes the letter back to themselves. And it just connects with this part of like how cruel I can be to my body. And then instead I can be really appreciative of it. And then, yeah. So that's just another way of looking at, like, instead of judging the body, it's like my arms, they actually give me independence. They help me drive. I can do self-care, brush my teeth. I can paint, which I love. My arms give my children great hugs, and I can really appreciate that. Okay, goodbye binging letter is another tool that they have. They don't have a goodbye restricting dieting letter, but I think that could be a really helpful process too. This was a real one from one of their clients. And it just said, I really also like the compassion. Instead of saying like shaming the binging, it's, I want to thank you for being there for me all these years. I wonder how I would have survived some periods of my life without you, where I think a lot of times the food helped us to survive certain traumas, certain pains. Like for me, through the hardships with postpartum, I really felt like it helped me to survive too. But being friends with you has also brought on pain. And I don't feel good about myself when I hang out with you, temporarily, but not in the long run. Right? And I've worked really hard to learn new strategies for coping with everything that life throws at me. Oops. And yet I find myself holding on to you as my security blanket in case things get too hard. And so I can see that that is fear. I am learning that I can trust myself. I can trust myself to respond to situations, thoughts, and feelings as they arise. And I am becoming more open to the idea that I have enough and I am enough. And so without hesitation, I'm deciding to say goodbye to you. There's a piece in that still feels kind of sad, but I really don't need you in my life anymore. Right? I can just turn to food when I want it. I can eat anything that I enjoy, but I don't have to engage with you anymore with binging. So again, it's very much a relationship that we're working towards shifting and changing. And again, really liking Richard's idea of the interpersonal downward arrow. I think it could be helpful too, like to say goodbye to restricting. You've helped me feel in control. And at the same time, maybe I don't need you anymore either, right? And I can work towards acceptance. Okay, you got the list of references for their research and then the books. And then other resources here. I've already shared about my 2-day habits and addiction training on the 21st and the 28th. If you're in Oklahoma, I am putting on a 3-day conference that will give you all of your CEUs for Oklahoman therapists and psychologists and all of the master's level degrees, the LPCs, LCSWs that you can join, and I'd love to have you. I also do one-on-one training, and then Christina also does one-on-one consultations with therapists from all over. They don't have any restrictions to state lines unless you're using insurance. So you can connect with her. That's her email. I think she's just awesome, really smart, really compassionate because she's been through the journey herself. And yeah, I think she's a great resource. I think it's important to have a team and people with knowledge about it when you're treating binge eating and food addiction. And if you or a client that's interested in going through the 10-week program, they can just go through this and look up the state. In Oklahoma, we only have Christina, but I found that other states have 2 or 3. I've also found some in Canada. And so it's just a great program that's evidence-based. Okay, let me connect with Urban now in the last 20 minutes. Yes, Misa, the PowerPoint slides were sent in with the meeting, with the meeting link and the reminder. And if you didn't receive it, check your spam folder and your junk mail. Sometimes because I'm using an email list, it goes straight to junk mail for people. Okay. All right, so let me go ahead and just connect with Urban. Urban, how have you been since we've last connected in August? And do you have any thoughts so far about this process?
Yeah, no, I mean it's kind of been up and down, but I think the stuff we presented today is there was a lot of parts that really connected with me as you were sort of just going through all the different things. There were times I sort of felt myself saying, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," or I would agree with that, or I didn't unfortunately make like specific notes.
No, you're good.
Trying to just pay attention to all the information.
Yeah.
Which was very very well researched and very well put together. Like it really presents a good way of presenting the issue and connecting it with the sort of goals of TEAM-CBT, and now with the sort of the mindfulness approach being incorporated with that, I think is a good way of blending those two things together.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I've encountered before, I've seen before, like the hunger scale, but more specifically some of the sort of binge eating techniques, and I've been sort of capturing screenshots as as you've been doing your presenting, just as things to go back and look at and reflect on for myself.
Yeah, I wonder if if some of these pieces resonated more than the more of the like control the temptation aspect that we had initially worked on. You were saying like there was just certain things that made sense, and I'm just wondering like overall the feelings that you get from.
Yeah, I mean one of the things that sort of stood out to me was like kind of really actually before this day I had been thinking about this idea that maybe it would be all right to have to say like you can have this like whatever, this sweet or whatever every day, but no more, right? Like so you still have that as a almost like I don't know, I hate to use it as a reward kind of thing because I don't really like that sort of system, but just the idea that you can have this whatever special thing whenever you want or at the end of the day or whatever, but then I thought afterwards, well, then how does that not lead to you just wanting more of that, or like the sort of like using that as a reason to you had that and then something else comes up and like oh, a friend called me and I went out with a friend and they want to go have a drink, so like I can't do that because I already had my special snack. How's that gonna work? Like is the restrictive thing better or like
just from hearing what you're expressing, I think there are pieces in that may still have some levels of restriction, where even if we're saying like I can have that every day but just like so much, we actually are saying like not even telling ourselves I can have it every day. It's saying like if I really want it, let go of the restrictive mindset that tells myself I can't have it, I shouldn't have it, that's bad, that makes me a bad person, right? I'm eating badly. And it's saying if I really want it, I may actually not want it every day, but if I really want it, and for the first few days, and they say even a couple of weeks, because you've been restricting and making that food forbidden, you actually may really want it badly for the first 3, 4, or 5 days. But ultimately, it gets to the space of balance, variety, and moderation again. And that I may actually not want this every day after work anymore. Anything that I allow myself to eat, even my favorite food, I will ultimately, my body will just want more variety. And so I may not want to eat that candy every day anymore. And then I'll want it on occasion, but maybe the next day I want, a bag of chips or I want yogurt, but it's actually just tuning into your system instead of anything like, okay, now I've already had my sweets, so I shouldn't go out and have drinks with friends. It's actually just like, what is my body really wanting? If I'm having drinks with friends, how do I feel after one, after two? And it's not setting a preset limit of what I should or shouldn't eat or drink. It's just really tuning in with your body and actually letting go of all of the rules, even the rules of like, I can eat this every day. That's another rule, right?
Yeah,
and that may actually not listen to you.
Was that the circle that you showed, like the how, what, when, why, all of that, in terms of really, I think, trying to identify what is that underlying need that's trying to be fulfilled with the eating. I think that's probably a pretty critical component for myself. I think at least that seems to resonate pretty strong. The other question that came up for me was how does one determine what that ideal set point is? Like, how is that? You talked about like maybe you were in the 80th percentile all your life. You can't be in the 50th percentile. It's not, it's not realistic. I mean, you can starve yourself to do that, but like, is it determined, like when they determine that, is that determined based on those, testing when you were an infant sort of thing, or, as a child to see what percentile you were, that's what percentile you should be in currently? Like, how do you determine that set weight point like today?
Yeah, good question.
Calculation, or how do they figure that out?
So you actually don't determine it through any external means. The percentage weights was just an example of like, if you've been in that space, it's probably very unrealistic to continue to try to get to the 50th percentile. But it's actually not determined by any external means. It's actually if I get back into a healthy relationship with food, where I'm mindful, I'm not shaming any food, the body often naturally gets to a set point weight after time, right? And then the exception, she says, is like if the weight actually doesn't shift at all, they may actually be at their set point weight, or they may want to go through some like getting a metabolic panel to really assess, like, is there something medical as well that's getting in the way of me getting to a different set point weight that I could feel better about. But yeah, it's just more of a natural process. Your body knows what its set point weight is, and our goal is actually to let go of the focus on the weight and the number to determining how I eat and actually just changing my relationship with food. One thing I thought that we could demo, Urban, let me know what your thoughts are. But I thought like the method of connecting with the deeper needs and some pieces of the hidden emotion, like the trigger, feeling, need, and action plan process. I wondered if that would actually be a piece that could be helpful, because I think it throws in some pieces of problem solution. It throws in some pieces of mindfulness. And I'm wondering what your thoughts were on that for our 10-minute demo here.
Sure, I'm open to anything.
Okay, great. So let's look at that process on, now we're trying to use the tool trigger, feeling, need, action plan. So this is just part of that mindfulness and awareness. So your moment in time in your habits log was after work, right? So is it the trigger is like after work, I'm kind of burnt out and exhausted from working with these kids all day?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's necessarily a work day or just every day, like it's at the end of the day, I find myself really pretty good with food throughout most of the day. Like morning, breakfast, lunch, I eat enough to sort of satisfy, then I go on, I do my day, I have my work, I have my, things that I'm involved in, and and then, maybe in the evening, if I have some activity, then I'll have my supper. It'll be, a pretty well-balanced meal. Then I go out and do my activity, or if I don't have that activity, then that's probably I don't know what I'm doing, watch TV or something, I suppose. But then sometime in that evening time between, after supper, a couple hours or an hour or so after supper to whatever the time is that I go to bed, generally I come home, I shower, get ready for the end of the day, eat my supper, and watch some Netflix or something, or watch a show or whatever, and unwind before going to bed. But somewhere in that window, that's when those cravings, those like that need to find something that's satisfying, or feeling the need to feel like something that's going to make me feel good, or whatever it is. But it never really, it doesn't really ever come from food. You try a bunch of different things, and eventually it's kind of like, okay, now I'm overfull, and I'm still not feeling any better. In fact, now I just feel worse.
Yeah. So the triggers is sometimes like in the evenings after work when I'm alone and I'm kind of feeling exhausted and unfulfilled. Right. So it was the triggers. Sorry, it's triggers, feeling, need, action plan. Triggers, feeling.
It's almost like if I was to, let's say, I don't know, come home from work, and usually typically when I get home from work, it's like 8 o'clock or something. So I've already had my supper at work.
You've already eaten at work.
I get home, I shower, yeah, I should just go to bed. Then I would skip that whole cycle of, foraging for something that's going to make me feel better, or fulfilled, or something, or whatever that need is that I'm not getting met. I suspect is probably the big culprit behind where that's driving that behavior.
Yeah. And when we were connecting with the feelings on your habits log, you had talked about like, I'm feeling kind of like exhausted, stressed. But I also wondered too, when you were talking about like wanting companionship sometimes, where there's a part that says like I want to date, but I kind of just feel insecure, or I wouldn't want to date someone at my size. I wondered if there was a feeling as well of like in the exhaustion and stress of like possibly there's a piece of inadequacy or loneliness that could come up in the evenings when you're alone.
Yeah, definitely there is. There's maybe it's not every day, but definitely there are feelings like this is I'm here by myself. I might have my kids around or whatever, but they're off doing their thing, and
right.
They're watching their shows or something, or they're going off to music or whatever they have for their activity. I don't see them really as much anymore now that they've gotten older. So I am there. I don't have really other people to. I have friends, I guess, that I talk to, or that I
Right.
But yeah, definitely there is no real connection to other people, right?
So is the need, am I hearing maybe connection?
Well, it's probably, it is, but I think it's more than that. Like,
what else?
Something deeper, more, it's more, physical connection, or appreciation, or.
Say that again. Physical connection.
Appreciation, or.
Yeah. Right. Like in the list of needs where we were talking about with the hidden emotion, a lot of pieces, it's like I need connection, but underneath that, I may need affection, appreciation, closeness, like physical closeness with another human being. Because maybe that's where like the phone call with a friend is still not very satisfying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of those things, I think, I can go to dance and things like that, but that's for the most part, most of those things involve or don't involve touch, right? So, and I think I'm a very touch orientated person where touch is important and just
yes. Yeah, and imagine like filling our needs for touch with that food. I would imagine it feels really effective. This is something physical. This is something I can connect with, that feels maybe comforting and satisfying in that moment, right? And so in the examples, they go through this awareness process of uncovering, this is my triggering moment. My kids are off doing their own thing. It's the evenings after work, because all of the other times you said it doesn't feel like you have any kind of issues with food or binging in the daytime. And if you were to connect with your feelings, you're saying, I'm actually feeling kind of exhausted and stressed after work, but maybe even deeper, I'm feeling inadequate, I'm feeling lonely, and maybe even a yearning there, a desire there for connection, which is a basic human need, I think. I still question Dr. Burns's statement of like, we don't need love or connection for our wellness or happiness. Because he's like, the more I'm alone, the happier I felt with myself. I was like, I really wonder about that. Like, is that indefinite?
Disagree with that.
Yeah, I was like, is it when you're indefinitely alone? He's like, I spent a whole month just hanging out by myself and I was happier and happier. And I'm like, I just really don't know, because I think he did go back after the month to his wife and his family. But I think like indefinitely, I don't know if we actually feel more joy being alone.
We're social beings, so we need other people around us, and
right, and touch.
I mean, of course, there are people who need that set time, that aloneness, that time alone. But a lot of my clients and probably even for myself and people that I know, that's not really an important need for them, because they spend most of their day by themselves. They work in an office, or they're in a cubicle, or they're, they don't get that touch. They don't get that affection. They don't interact so much with someone. And they can spend all day, not even leave the house.
Yeah.
So yeah, that love and connection is, I think, vital to their, happiness, really.
Yeah.
And their growth, to their.
I agree. Just think of like children too as physical needs. Like I'm thinking of mine, they need so much, like they run to you and they hug your leg. They need that physical contact instead of just saying hi to you or talking to you on the phone, right? Like it's truly a need that helps us to feel safe and grounded and touch, affection, connection in a deeper way. And then action plan. So they talk about having that self-care voice, and you can craft that just for the sake of time for yourself, where it's like, of course I turn to food because it's physical and it's there and it always comforts me. And at the same time, in the, playing the tape through afterwards, I then often just feel guilty and disconnected, and it only worked temporarily. And so what are non-edible ways that I can actually begin to meet this true need of, like, maybe there are moments when, I give my children hugs, but they're not always there. And then what are other ways that I could actually meet this need? And what could be my action plan? And it could be small steps. It could be bigger things, like not waiting until I get to a certain size to start dating, right? Because in the book, they also say, like, don't put your life on hold. Like, I shouldn't wear this outfit until I'm a certain size. They say now dress in a way that feels good to you. Now begin to engage and proceed with life. Of course, we'd want to work through some pieces of acceptance and fear, because I think this would be exposure therapy. But what could be a really solid solution in your action plan that meets this need for physical connection, affection, appreciation? What are your thoughts, Urban?
That's very challenging. I don't really, that's hard to say.
Yeah, this is where probably that 101 list of ways to meet our needs.
If I was doing those things already, that would probably be helping, right?
Right. Exactly. It's things that you're not doing.
Now I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, and these would be like things that you're not doing currently that may feel a little bit scary, and there's not a quick fix, but I think we would do like exposure therapy.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I think, doing those, not putting life on hold, waiting to get to a certain size is probably,
certain size to start dating.
Probably something to work towards.
Yeah. And so something, am I hearing just like small action plans of like different ways I can just begin to like connect with people or date or something like that? That wouldn't be like immediate, but something gradual, whether, I'd probably do little steps for big feats too, where for people, it could be like, I just start to look at what are the singles activities available in the area? What are things that I could really enjoy? Whether, I go dancing because I know you like salsa dancing or other things, taking a new class. And then those are ways I can just connect with new friends and then possibly transition into dating, right? Does that sound like an action plan that would resonate with you?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could maybe.
Yeah. Right, like look up those activities, and then I could look at like taking a new class, or like meeting people online or something, right? And then ultimately it's transitioning into like beginning to date and beginning to meet people and filling my time with actually connecting with people and meeting that need. So yeah. Any other thoughts or questions about that process, Urban?
No, I mean, the process I think is pretty clear. Just
Does this feel like for you, like it would be exposure therapy, but does this feel like it would be an effective process if there was something truly in place that I am no longer putting life on hold until I'm a certain size to actually, I'm scared, but I would move forward. And once I meet this true need, this would probably help no longer need that other activity to give me a voice about my true needs.
Yeah, I have done it, and I am doing some of those things that are already on there. So that's
yeah.
I think finding an actionable thing that my concern, I guess, is that you're might be replacing those actions, might be replacing rather than being restricting, you're engaging in activities to not have access to those foods, right? Like you still are restricting, but you're restricting only because you don't have the time now to be alone thinking about, what can I have that will satisfy me or meet my unmet needs, right?
And our hope is that it doesn't feel restrictive, that it's not just in place for like to put off the food, I can't have it, so I got to do all of these things to avoid it. That we actually want to look at, again, that decision making, it's always a legitimate decision to eat. And another option is, yes, I can also choose ways to just redirect my focus, whether I go for a walk, I do XYZ. But what we see is like, if I then also meet this true need, it doesn't actually feel restrictive. It feels nourishing. It feels like that panic attack no longer needs to come up when I'm actually having a voice about something, or that binge eating no longer feels like a need because I'm actually meeting that true need through connecting with people and not putting life on hold.
Yeah, I like the idea of redirection versus restricting.
Yeah, and then it's always, those three options are always legitimate. Eat anyway, redirect my focus, or meet my true needs through this way, right? Okay, it is 12:35. I appreciate everyone who hung in there even 5 minutes longer than planned. Please feel free to stay if you have any other thoughts or questions. I have the time for that. I really appreciate Marina's comment that David does have a cat, I believe. So yeah, he's not ever completely alone. Yeah. But yeah, there's just pieces in this that I hope for you, Urban, that it's yeah, no longer looked at as restrictive eating or distraction, but it's actually a way for me to have awareness about what has this thing been doing for me. I've been trying to fill up, and then I could actually truly fill up in the long term by having more of those true connections for touch and affection and time with people, right? I know that's really important to you. Okay, so from here, let me see if there's any other questions. Instead of me going through all of the comments, does anybody just have any other thoughts or questions for Urban or thoughts about this process? Rhonda, I joined 3 minutes late. Would love to see the slides you took off the screen. Okay, so I also saw a message that some of the slides have been changed. I sent you an updated slides email, and then the updated slides are also in the reminder that see you in 30 minutes email. And if you don't see that, check in your spam or a junk mail. And if you still don't see it in there, email me and then I could send it to you. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions about this process? Those of you who need to run, let me go ahead and send you the survey link. I appreciate all of your time. Oh, it only went to, sorry.
I have a comment, Tyan.
I'm sorry, I don't see who. Oh, yes, Madeline.
So you said any comments. This has been so great. Thank you. And thank you, Urban, for sharing your story with us. During all of this, I have a couple of patients who've been struggling for years with the evening wine. And we've done the triple paradox, and they don't really want to end it because there's just too many benefits, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we've discussed this before, but it's just really, I mean, I love the way you just, hey, I can apply it to the wine. You can drink your wine, you can distract yourself, or you can actually meet your true needs. And that's what we're all running away for in these things. So I just think it can be applied to so many bad habits.
Yeah, that's a really good point, where I thought this was more directed towards binge eating, but it could be a tool where we could also connect with other habits. And there's likely other needs, I think, that most habits are trying to meet, right? When we're trying to escape or distract. Yeah, that's a really good point. But yeah, ultimately, they don't want to stop drinking. So we're not in a space of like stimulus control with that. But we could still probably create positive shifts through applying mindfulness and connecting with needs or distracting with other activities that feels good to them too. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts or questions? Oh, Rhonda found it in your spam folder. That's good. Ellen, thanks for the session. It's been very informative. I'm glad it was informative. Yeah, and if those of you who just need a run, please feel free to do that. Thank you for your time and spending the Friday with us and appreciating Urban. I'd love to hear as you start to continue to apply some of these tools a little bit differently, how that goes for you. And then I could send an update to the rest of the group as well. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And feel free to open the mic if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm glad you connected with the material. Marina, I always appreciate your comments. I think it's always insightful and encouraging. So yeah, I really love this approach too. I think it's just so much more compassionate than just like, oh, just control your appetite and stop wanting that donut. And that's the only problem, right? I just think it's so much more honoring of the whole human being, the complexities with habits. And it's, I love the message of connecting with trusting yourself again. And a lot of times we've lost that for whatever reason. We've lost that message that you can trust yourself, but I love that your body has wisdom and you can listen to that and trust that and find more enjoyment and pleasure by tuning in. Right? Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Tim. Ellen appreciates and loves your comments too, Marina. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend then. Happy holidays. If you are in a space where you're celebrating Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas. If you are in a space of celebrating that as well, or Happy Hanukkah and whatever else is going on. But yeah, I hope you have a happy holidays, and I'll see you back next year. I'm sure I'll have a webinar either January or February or something. Let me know what topics you like, and we could go towards that process. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Diane.
Thanks, Diane. Thank you. Thanks, Urban.
Thank you, Taya.
Thank you.